Who are your first favorite heroes? It's Throwback Thursday. What's up, Universe, and welcome back to the web's first must-see comic and nerd culture show. Welcome to Comic Universe, guys. I'm your host, as always, C-Dubs, and today is Throwback Thursday. And I thought to myself, what better way to kick off Throwback Thursday here on this channel than to go ahead and do the thing that I remember first. There are three heroes, three superheroes, if you will, that have influenced me from the beginning. Okay, now I have some of them I have a love-hate relationship with. Some of them I absolutely adore, and some of them unfortunately have been forgotten over time. Now, my all-time favorite superhero, and one we're not going to be talking about here on Throwback Thursday, at least as of right now, is Wolverine. He is the person that once I became myself, if you will, as a kid you're trying to find yourself. The character that has spoke to me more than any other is Wolverine. But there are three guys prior to him that set me on this path of nerddom, if you will, that has placed me into this culture that we all know and love. And those three characters, the first, the Man of Steel, Superman. Most people's first introduction to superheroes, to heroes in general, I would say, he is the hero of heroes. And he is a character I do have a love-hate relationship with. In the beginning, absolutely adored him. As I grew older, I found him kind of cheesy. When you're a teenager and he's all truth, justice, and the American way, and kind of like Hulk Hogan too, eat your vitamins, say your prayers, and drink your milk type of thing. Never was a big fan of either one of those guys during that time of my life. But Superman is going to be the big focal point of this particular series as of today, I should say. Excuse me. The other two characters are Mighty Mouse. I know that's kind of funny, and that is the forgotten hero, the hero that a lot of people don't remember or even know exists, and that's unfortunate. I'm going to try to bring him back to the limelight and share some of my thoughts and memories and some history on that character as well here on this segment. And the third character, if anyone knows me, I am a gigantic Masters of the Universe fan. It is one of my all-time favorite fandoms. It's the first toy line I got into. I had almost every single toy. I still have toys to this day from the original 1980s toy line. Okay, that's how hardcore I was into that toy line and that fandom. I even won a BMX bike. And for anyone who was around back in the 80s and early 90s, BMX was top of the line in bicycles from the Masters of the Universe movie. There was a contest at my local movie theater growing up. Basically, it was a movie contest, who saw the most movies. And I saw Masters of the Universe 8 times that summer. Even though I wasn't even the biggest fan of it. It was just okay, but I did love seeing He-Man in live action. Even though it didn't resemble my He-Man. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and take a few steps back. The first character that I ever remember seeing, admiring, and wanting to be like was the Man of Steel. And it all kind of stems back to the Max and David Fletcher cartoon series of the 40s. They had a production company in Miami, Florida, which is where I'm from originally, and I don't know if it was just because it was in Miami, they ran so often, but they were in heavy syndication for me in the 80s, even though they came out in the 40s. Not quite sure why, but they were. And then on top of that, my mother was also a huge fan of the black and white TV series. And I don't remember, and I doubt it was in syndication, but I even remember, and this could just be an implant, it may not even be an actual memory, listening to an audio drama that was on the radio, and it was the classic, Superman radio station, or radio show, if you will. I'm not quite sure how that was possible, how I remember that. I don't know if my mom had recorded some of these, because she was big into that fandom as well. Not quite sure, but I remember it somehow. But one thing that I do know that is factual was the 1940s cartoon series, once again, by the Fletchers. It was originally owned by Paramount, the actual film studio, if you will. So it's kind of funny how Superman has some ties to Paramount and Warner Brothers now, if you will. As we all know, Superman is a creation, or well, not a creation of, but owned by DC Comics. Okay, created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Everybody knows that, of course. Superman's real name, Kal-El, also goes by Clark Kent, his Earth name, if you will. And he's from the planet Krypton. We all know the history of Superman, crash landed here, sent from a dying planet. And he grows up to be our greatest hero in the DC universe. Probably the greatest hero of any universe, to be honest with you. He is a character we all know that is simply, if the shoe fits, wear it. If I need this guy to be able to do something, especially in the early days, I don't even know if there's a power he hasn't have. Maybe he can't blow fire from his mouth. That might be the only one I think I've never seen from him. I've obviously, between the crazy superpowers in the movies to the crazy superpowers in the comics, he's been able to do super ventriloquism. He's been obviously impeccable eyesight. He can basically see through walls, X-ray vision, heat vision, cooling breath, super fast, beyond super strong. There is nothing he can't do. And even in the beginning, when he was not able to fly and he only leaped buildings in a single bound, he was still amazing. And I remember in the early days thinking how great it would be to be so strong to be able to stop these big giant robots that these mad scientists created. And I used to play those scenarios in my head and run around. And I had a cat, funny enough, when I was younger. I'm talking like 5 years old here, guys. A long time ago. My cat's name, believe it or not, was actually called Shithead. And I don't think that was his original name, but he kept pooping in the plants around the house, and my grandmother would yell at him and call him a shithead. And it somehow, as kids do, you kind of pick up on that and you start calling him shithead. Of course, I didn't know what it was, and my family did try to get me to stop. I just wouldn't stop. I even remember them, I had to lick a bar of soap because I kept saying it. But that clearly was his name, and finally my parents just kind of gave up and that's the cat's name. And I never understood why I was getting in trouble for saying the cat's name, but I wouldn't stop because I love that cat. And I remember when I met my uncle, who was married to my aunt at the time, when I met his parents for the first time, they then asked, oh, is that your kitty? I was like, yes. And they're like, what's his name? I'm like, I'm holding this cat by the freaking neck. And I remember clearly saying, shithead. And they're like, oh, you're one of those type of kids. And bad parenting. But no, my mom was a great parent. But seriously, that's kind of just a side story. But I remember pretending my cat was a giant robot created by these sinister professors, if you will, mad scientists, and I was Superman trying to essentially stop them. And that poor cat dealt with so much. I know I tortured the hell out of him when my parents weren't looking. Nothing mean or cruel or that would hurt him, but just kids dragging him around and things like that. And the cat clearly understood because I never got scratched from him. But yeah, I just remember I used to have a blankie, and I would tie it around my neck, and I literally would think I was flying like Superman. I remember diving off of the bed and actually hurting myself a good couple of times, and I remember one time telling my mom I had X-ray vision, and she's like, basically, oh, that's nice. And when I kept pushing and I could prove it, I can show it, Mom, we had these folding closet doors that had almost like blinds, if you will, and you could kind of see through them, right? And me and my 5-year-old mind, I remember just having my mom say, Mom, just stand there, And then I'd go in the closet and I'd close the doors, watch, I can see, I have X-ray vision, I can see what you're doing. And she would wave or whatever, and I'd be like, see, you're waving, and my mom, obviously knowing what I was doing, but it's like, oh, that's amazing. So she made me feel like I had actual X-ray vision. So I have this fond memory of Superman growing up, especially in the early days. And like I said, as I grew a little older and the Ninja Turtles and the Rude and the Crude and the Rad and the Party Animals came in, Superman started dipping further and further down on the list for me. And until probably All-Star Superman, I had lost my love and admiration and respect for Superman. He just didn't do it for me, to be honest with you, anymore. He just didn't connect with me like he used to. I would support any movie of his. I did like the movies. But I just remember never really caring about him anymore. And then I read All-Star Superman, and then eventually the animated series came out, and I saw, or not series, but the animated movie came out, and I saw that, and all that love, admiration, and respect came back immediately. And to this day, I do hold the original, DC Prime Superman in high regards. I'm not the biggest New 52 fan of Superman. He is okay, but the original Superman, to be able to be so strong and to never waver in your beliefs is a super strength and superpower onto itself. And there's just something about that he could teach all of us here in this world. Whether we have superpowers, one person can make a difference. And if everyone chipped in, this world would be a better place. And I know that sounds cheesy and corny, but it is the absolute truth. And it is Superman who gives us the hope, if you will, that gives us the foundation in which to try to strive to be as good as. And I actually feel sorry for anyone who don't see that. And though I have the utmost respect and admiration for him, I would not, to this day, consider him one of my all-time favorites, if you will. And he doesn't speak to me on a daily basis, but I do understand the importance of Superman. I do appreciate the fact that we have Superman, and I do appreciate the fact that the sacrifices that his creators and their families went through just so that we could have this character. Because without DC's backing and Warner Brothers backing, there's no saying where Superman would have gone. And it's no disrespect at all to Siegel or Schuster, okay? But they didn't have the fortune to be able to kind of push him in the limelight as DC did. And maybe they could have sold him off to Marvel or to another company, and who knows what would have happened. But I do know what has happened, and Superman is time-tested and time-approved time and time again. And for that, Superman is the first major hero that ever had an impact on my life. Now, Universe, I'm sure he's done the same to you in some way, shape, or form, so please let us know in the comments below if Superman or whoever was the first hero to really speak to you. Doesn't have to be your current favorite hero or your all-time favorite hero. Who was the first that really spoke to you? Next up on the docket for today is Mighty Mouse. Mighty Mouse is an amazing character that unfortunately, not enough people even know exists to this day. Truly. And he was created by Terry Toons, a studio that was owned by 20th Century Fox back in the day in the 1940s, around 1942. And it's funny how in the 1940s, the serialized Superman cartoons kind of transitioned, still was in syndication into the 80s when I was watching them. So did Mighty Mouse. Now, Mighty Mouse has had a few incarnations. Originally, he was called Super Mouse, and eventually turned into Mighty Mouse. He does have somewhere in the realm of 80 theatrical films, which not a lot of people even realize. Now, when we're saying films, obviously short films, not like long 2-hour suspense movies or anything like that, or live action. And Mighty Mouse was someone who hammered home to me how great it was to fly, and how most superheroes should fly, and they should have a cape. And though Mighty Mouse, at first glance, is a carbon copy of Superman, I don't see it that way. I see him as being his own character, and though he may have some of the powers of Superman, like flight and super strength and speed. He's a mouse. And in my 5-year-old mind, he was so much more frail than me, Superman, or any human. And the fact that he was able to withstand the same pressures, I, in my 5-year-old mind, always viewed him as actually stronger than even Superman. So when Mighty Mouse came around, when I started tying that cape around my neck, I was transitioning from being Superman to being Mighty Mouse and being louder and obnoxious about it. I remember my mom saying, okay, I got it, just being frustrated that all I was chanting was, here I come to save the day. And I would constantly say it, and my mom would get so irritated. Okay, and she says, I understand, honey. I understand. I'm saved. I'm saved. So yeah, it's just something that in my 5-year-old mind, the fact that he was a mouse and could do all the same things Superman could do, I was like, he's got to be stronger than Superman because he's a mouse and he's doing it. And just a scale ratio, it made sense in my head. So I always viewed Mighty Mouse as a better and greater superhero than Superman. And then as time moved on and we all forgot about Mighty Mouse and his obnoxious catchphrase, it's pretty sad when I look back, and again, in my mind, I always viewed him as stronger then. And the fact that he never lived up to or never continued on like Superman did, I remember at a point in my life I was a little sad and like, oh, that sucks, I had such fond memories of this character. And along with him, there was in that same era, I think, like Heckle and Jekyll, who were like these two crows. They had their own show that was during his show, and I think maybe even Woody Woodpecker. I'm not 100% sure on that one, though. But there was like this block that came back in the late 80s, or maybe even closer to the early 90s, where Mighty Mouse was back and popular again, and it was like Mighty Mouse and His Amazing Friends or something like that. They weren't super powered or anything like that, but after the Mighty Mouse 5-minute cartoon, you'd get a Heckle and Jekyll 5-minute cartoon or a Woody Woodpecker cartoon. So it's like this blockade of different cartoons, and I just kind of have this fond memory of him. And for anyone who doesn't know, go do yourself a favor, go back and look at some of the old serials. And by cereals, I'm talking TV here, not food. Go back and watch them. I'm sure they're on YouTube. Maybe I'll even leave a few clips down below for you guys to kind of see them. Mighty Mouse had this huge impact on me. And does anybody else out there even remember that he exists? And does anyone have fond memories of him out there in the universe? I really wonder, because to be honest, I'm the only person I've ever met to really hold Mighty Mouse in such a high regard. And I don't know, it just would be kind of cool to kind of hash out some of the memories. I remember him like literally stopping a train with one hand while trying to save his female friend that was tied up to the tracks. And we're talking a full-size train, not like a toy train, And the fact that he was doing this and he was a mouse, man, it just blew my mind as a 5-year-old kid. Now, again, we're talking about the 3 characters that impacted my life from the beginning. And we've already talked about Superman. We've already talked about Mighty Mouse. And today, right now, I should say, we are talking about He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. In my mind, the biggest and greatest toy line of all time. And the Turtles do give a good knock on the door. Transformers as well. But man, when I tell you the impact He-Man had out the gate there, I've never seen anything like it since and or before, And truly, Masters of the Universe was this epic tale, as we all know, of Prince Adam, whose alter ego was He-Man, who had the Sword of Power and protected over the forces of magic in Castle Grayskull and of Eternia. And alongside of that came Skeletor and all of his goons, if you will. Now, when we talk about characterization, and world building, and mythos, and abilities, man, He-Man was on point. The guys creating that show, man, they were hammering out action figures and toy line and episodes and all these things constantly. There was just so many. It was like rapid fire, like characters out of a machine gun. You had characters the likes of, obviously, He-Man and Skeletor. Okay, He-Man, this big, hulking juggernaut. That wasn't just it wasn't just brawn. He was brains too. He constantly showed us he had to figure a way out of the situation, okay, and not just use his strength, okay. Then we had the likes of Skeletor, this evil, maniacal magician with a skull skeleton for a face and this blue toned skin. Okay, just reeked of evil from Snake Mountain. And he had his giant pet Panther that he would just pet, okay, and ride into battle. And of course, since he had Panther, we needed Battle Cat. He-Man had Battle Cat, aka Cringer. Cringer was Prince Adam's pet tiger, and when He-Man became He-Man, he would aim his magical sword and blast his cat, turning him into Battle Cat. This hardcore, super strong, take no prisoners, take no shit, feisty tiger. This guy, man, He-Man, who was clearly ranking somewhere anywhere about 300 pounds, just sitting on his back, riding into battle with this muscular man. And he had this armor that was on him as well, on his face and on his back, so that you couldn't tell that it was Cringer. But man, oh man, was this cat powerful. Then we had the likes of Man-at-Arms, okay, Duncan, who was the man that was in charge of Eternia's and the kingdom's guard, if you will. He was a handy-dandy. He could fix it up. He was a supreme intelligent in terms of battle strategies and things of that nature. He was the best friend of Tekeldor, okay, who was the king of the Eternia. And then we had Tila, who was Man-at-Arms' daughter, and she was a feist female warrior. She was like fury on the battlefield, I remember. Okay, and on the bad guy side, going back to these guys, the likes of Evil Lyn and Merman, Beastman, Trapjaw, Triclops. I mean, the names alone are just so unique and so like on point to these characters. And you know, as the series went on, you had like lame names like Fisto and Chapo and Clawful, but they fit so beautifully to that character. Okay, Whiplash and Buzz-Off and Stratos. But when you looked at the toy and you'd seen what they could do, or you saw what they did in the show, or you read what they did in little mini magazines that came with the toys, okay, it was like as perfect as calling this guy Superman or Spider-Man. It was like so spot on. And these guys, man, they were pumping them out left and right. And I just have this fond memory of like pulling out, I'm talking 30, 40 action figures and just sitting Indian style with all my toys up to watch TV, okay, or stand them up, however I could get them to watch TV while we were watching Master of the Universe. Okay, and then whatever happened in the episode, I would play that out with my action figures. Okay, and it was just a great time, and it's something that unfortunately, as kids get older, and not to knock today's generation, but you know, as games and electronics are so more prevalent and more interesting, and what more kids gravitate to nowadays, the toys, for better or for worse, are getting pushed to the side, and less kids are going to have that kind of an experience where they can watch their favorite show with their favorite toys and then act it all out and just have this unique experience and this unique creative experience at that kind of helped keep me in this culture that I know and love today. And I remember the movie being such a letdown in terms of nothing I knew registered to it except for Skeletor. Skeletor was the only one that really meshed well with me as a kid. I liked some of the characters, like Blade and things like that in the movie. I guess Evil Lyn kind of slightly registered as well, but nobody else looked the part or fit the part for me. And even though I saw that movie 8 times in the movie theater as a kid, it just kind of was so funny that, you know, every time I went and saw it, I loved those characters more and more, but I hated them at the same time after the movie. I'm like, telling my aunt and telling my grandmother or telling my mom, whoever would take me to go see it, that's not how it really is. This is how it really is. And then asking, the great old question as to why it's changed. And, back then, it wasn't this culture of knowing, more about movies and the film industry wasn't around back then. So, my mom and aunt didn't really know why they weren't like that, and I never really understood until I got older, and it became a thing to understand, creative freedom and wanting to do your own thing with a said character, and it became what most movies were, like the original X-Men movies, they didn't follow a storyline per se. They kind of did their own thing, and it's just so funny how that movie was so meant to be like, they were expecting it to be as big as Star Wars. And even had their own version of, like, the Stormtroopers in it. And I remember reading a documentary about it. Or maybe it was on the DVD, on the special features when those were a thing. The director, there's a scene in the movie where, the second He-Man pulls out the sword and says, "I have the power." That's the day filming ended. The rest of the movie hadn't been finished yet. Okay. And maybe there's 10-15 minutes left of the ending, but that's how they had the movie ending originally. And the director's like, no, this can't be. So he pulls the sword out, and we all assume everything goes back to normal. There's no actual conflict between him and Skeletor. It was absolutely crazy that, like, there was no outcome. And he ended up putting the movie on, forcing the studio to put the movie on the shelf for about 4 months till he could scrounge together enough of his own money to pay these actors and film and everything to come back to finish out the rest of the movie. And it just always blew my mind that the passion he had to get that done, because that movie could have gone from bad to really bad if not for an actual ending, And it's funny too when we talk about everything that Marvel Studios and MCU does now with how they have after credit scenes that continue the story. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, the live action film, was one of the first movies to really give you an after credit scene, and maybe not a lot of people realize that. But at the end of the credits, spoiler alert, Skeletor, he's defeated, he's kicked down this giant tube, if you will, and he's supposed to fall into his death. But at the very end of the film, and the credits roll back, Skeletor's head pops up out of some water, and he's like, "I'll be back," or I don't remember exactly what he said, but he's just like in all his Skeletor glory, if you will. And I remember just being, oh my god, I didn't see it in the movie. I saw the movie 8 times. I didn't know that was at the end of the credits. And then when I finally got the VHS and I saw that, I was just like, oh my god, that's so amazing. Like, I didn't know. And I remember forcing my mom and my aunt and my grandmother to watch through the credits. And they're just like, at that time, they were just so second nature, just to credits are rolling, let's get out the movie theater type of thing. So yeah, those are just some of the fond memories I have. And again, with Throwback Thursday, we're kind of just going back, remembering some of the old times and the old things that kind of, made us who we are today. And Universe, I want to know, who are the heroes that most inspired you from the get-go? Again, they don't have to be your favorite hero, because again, none of these guys are my favorite hero. They're just the first 3 to introduce me to this culture. Guys, please, again, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Guys, and until next time, we'll see you in the universe.